This is Jonathan Agger, fifth Pro Boxing Fans, joined by David Tetreault, the CEO of BKB, and they've got a show this evening in Cardiff. David, tell us a bit about it. What's going on?
Oh, we have a stack card here from top to bottom. Barn burners throughout, topped off with Rocky going at it and putting his title on the line. It's going to be an incredible card. It's sold out. The matchmaking is incredible. We expect our fans to pile in from the prelims all the way to the main event. It's going to be great.
And where can fans watch tonight's card?
In the UK, they can watch on TalkSport. In the US, they can watch on Vice, and in LATAM, they can watch on Telemundo. So it's going to be an English and a Spanish broadcast.
So I feel like BKB, especially like the last maybe year or so, is definitely on the rise. We've seen obviously big names, Paulie Malignaggi, Lucas Brown was just fighting for the heavyweight title what last week or a couple of weeks ago. What do you put that down to? Why is BKB attracting all these big names?
Well, it comes down to the core of our team here and our chairman, our founder, Mike Vasquez. He's created an environment for excellence, and throughout our team, from operations to matchmaking to production to marketing, we've got great people working here. We have a vision about the way that we want to grow the sport. We have a plan, and within the confines of that plan, we're hitting milestones. We're signing great fighters. We're doing 50-50 fights, from the top of the card all the way to the bottom of the card for every event. And it's just bringing in more opportunity, more exposure. We're really growing our audience deeply with the Gen Z and the millennials. They love our content. They clamor for our content. They eat it up all across social media, and they engage. We see all of our ratings from our broadcast partners, and we're the number one show in a number of areas. So it's all excellent.
And is that what's brought about sort of the new deals you've got with Vice and TalkSport? Like people just attracted to this sort of brutality.
Yeah, and some people can view it as as brutality. I really look at it, and I've been involved in boxing, from Golden Boy, working with Oscar De La Hoya, with many of the greatest fighters in the world for several years, putting on mega fights, putting on championship events, putting on prospects and contenders. And what it comes down to is when you step away from boxing and you get into bare knuckle, the level of respect that fighters have, both men and women, for each other as they enter the ring is incredible. The amount of respect that they have for one another while they're fighting, it's at another level. And at the end of the fight, they show that this is a brotherhood, and overall, it's to me, it's a global movement. And anybody that is willing to get into a ring or trigon and do it with bare knuckle. There's a lot to be said in that, and from a viewership standpoint, it's the visceral experience that unfolds throughout, male or female. I mean, our audience composition, 42% of our audience composition is female. That tells you a lot. They really enjoy this. So I look at it more from a gladiatorial standpoint as opposed to just the violence that some people see in it. It's storytelling, and it's storytelling at the highest level. You have to have some real constitution to step in the ring and do what we do here.
Yeah, I meant it more like because you see a lot of these fights, and that some of these fights, they don't deliver. In professional boxing,
Mhm.
they're a lot of people say they're quite boring and technical, and
Yeah,
but with bare knuckle, you know what you're going to get. So I think is that
yeah.
is that what people are sort of tuning in for?
I think that's exactly it. Our rule set, and the way that our fighters are pretty much, forced to the center of the ring, and to let it go is what's important. But you have to take a look at the quality of our fighters and the style of our fighters. And by the way, the style and quality of our fighters, they're at the highest level in both the US and also in the UK, but there's a big difference in styles. In the UK, a lot of the pedigree in our fighters really comes from a boxing background, and you can kind of really see that they're traditionally they're boxers, and you see a lot more of the sweet science. In the US, a lot of our fighters are more from an MMA discipline, and you see a different style of fighting that involves clenching, which is very, very attractive to a lot of fighters. But then when we bring those two styles together,
Mm.
man, it's explosive. But I do have to tend to agree with you, and you kind of hear some of the complaints that Turkey Al-Sheikh has with some of the several $1 million purses that he puts up there for some fighters. And he uses that term that they become Tom and Jerry fighters, where they're just kind of running around the ring. That's what does not happen here in bare knuckle. In bare knuckle, they square up and they go at it.
I saw you met up with. I was looking on your Instagram. I saw you met up with Eddie Hearn maybe a
Yeah,
few months ago. You said sort
yeah,
of the post says about plans for Matchroom next year. What
yeah.
are some of those plans?
Well, so a lot of the discussions that we're having with Matchroom kind of center around BKB becoming a tent pole within their fight weeks. So if they're doing a massive Anthony Joshua fight or a Conor Benn fight on a Saturday night at Wembley, we would be folded into their whole fight week ceremonies, right? So they do their presser, their final presser. No, they do. Let's say if you take a look at fight week, you do Tuesday, you do the grand arrivals. Wednesday, you do a media workout. Thursday, you do your final presser. Friday, you do your big weigh-in. On Friday night, the discussions that we're having revolve around on the Friday night, we do a BKB event. So if they're doing something at Wembley or Tottenham, we want to align with them. We're also in these discussions with Queensberry. We look up to both of these promotions as emblems and beacons of success. I always have my staff really look at the way these promotions operate. And I said, this is the way that we want to be. So the discussions that we're having with, Frank, the discussions we're having with George, Eddie, et cetera, kind of revolve around us, entering into their fight week and being, that final push going into Saturday night, whether to sell tickets, whether to enhance sponsorship or to drive tune in or pay-per-view. We're that final push. I used to do this quite a bit. With Oscar when we did our big Canelo fights or our big Ryan Garcia fights in Las Vegas. After the final weigh-in, we would do a really great show in and around Las Vegas, leading into something at the T-Mobile.
Mm. And would that be your fighters, or would maybe some of their fighters who potentially aren't too active with and they got an offer to fight in BKB? Could they? Would that is that part of the discussions?
Those discussions are happening. Yeah, if there's some fighters that have interest at either one of those promotions to be part of that's absolutely part of the discussion. And we're opening up also just within both of those promotions the opportunity for their fighters to participate in events that may not necessarily align with kind of the big plan of the mega fights, but we're opening our arms to any of those fighters that want to participate in any of our events throughout the year, whether in the US or in the UK.
What are the plans for 2026? What fighters do you want to see in a BKB ring?
There's a we have our great roster, right? So we want to see Gustavo come back, we want to see LT come back, we want to see Marco make a big comeback, and have some great fights. On the flip side, we're also in discussions with some boxers as well as some former boxers about joining BKB. And I think that we'll be able to announce some of those names getting into the new year. And I'm talking some really big names that would shake up both here in the UK and also in the US, all of bare knuckle fighting. So those discussions are ongoing. We open up the year Jan 9 in Biloxi, Mississippi at the Hard Rock. Then Jan 31, we're back to Miami at the James L. Knight Center with a big fight that'll be BKB 50. Feb 21, we're back here in the UK. We're going to be at the Indigo at the O2 Arena. That's going to be our homecoming, to London, and we're really looking forward to that. And then March 28th, we're off to Foxwoods, the great casino in Connecticut. Those are just some of our shows that were lined up, going into the new year, into the first quarter. And then also coupled with that, we've just announced a new partnership with the Bally's organization. And with Bally's, we're going to kick off that partnership, as I said, Jan 9th in Biloxi, Mississippi at the Hard Rock. And that's a 360 for Bally's. So Bally's owns casinos, they own distribution, and they also own a technology. So we'll be staging our events inside their casinos. We'll be platforming our events on their networks and their channels on Bally's Live and Stadium. And then we'll be utilizing their technology, which goes into the wrist wraps. And that technology allows us to track punches live in the events. So as fans are watching our shows on TV, there'll be a power bar that'll come up on the screen that'll kind of show, the way that the fight is going. After each round, you'll be able to see who's landed more punches, what the velocity and G-force is of those punches. And you'll also be able to experience that inside the arena. So we're quite excited about that. And, so we've got Bally's on their platforms, and then we have our Vice, our TalkSport, and our Telemundo for our other events. So we've got two exclusive shows separate, but, all new technology that's going to be hitting our Bally's shows going forward.
Obviously, big fight in boxing later this year in Miami, Jake Paul against Anthony Joshua. What's your thoughts on that fight?
My thoughts on that fight are, hats off to Jake Paul for making it happen. Hats off to him for taking the challenge. If you take a look at the trajectory of his career and the way that he's architected all of his fighting, leading up to some really major fights with some top level boxers, ex-world champions, he's proved his mettle, right? Now, fighting Anthony Joshua, a former Olympiad, a two-time world champion, that's a tough task. But for both of those fighters and for both of those promotions, Eddie and Nikisa, my hat's off to both of them, because I think it does help all of combat sports when you have such stars as there of those two fighters entering the ring. I think it's good for us here in bare knuckle. We have close associations with a lot of our commentary staff, in particular Gareth Davies, who will be covering that fight as well for TalkSport. Our ring announcer, Mo, Big Mo, he's part of that event. So look, we're excited for what they're doing, and we'll look forward to the event.
What about the rematch in BKB?
Hey, if that was something that they wanted to do, that would be just incredible, and I'm open to it, if the two fighters are, and if Eddie and Nikisa are open to it, yeah, we'd love that.
Are you familiar with it with any of those guys? You seen any of those guys sort of, behind the scenes in training or anything?
I haven't been able to necessarily see them behind the scenes training, but I've met both of them, and they're both great gentlemen and great ambassadors to the sport and great athletes overall.
Just lastly, it was mentioned, I can't remember when, maybe a month or a few months ago, about Oleksandr Usyk joining
Hmm.
BKB. Obviously, he's talking about fighting Deontay Wilder this week.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
any discussions with Usyk?
yeah. So I'm very close to his manager, Igis Klimas. Usyk is figuring out what he wants to do with the rest of boxing. We've had ongoing dialogue about the opportunities for him in BKB. And Igis has said, when he's ready to make that decision, it could happen. And I met with Oleksandr in Italy earlier this year, and we talked about it. So we'll see. The door is open. It would be enormous for the sport and it would be great for us at BKB. But these are ongoing discussions. He's going to have to finish some of the business that he still has in boxing, and with Wilder coming up, he's got to get through that, and then we'll see what happens after that.
And just actually, last one. I've seen this week the numbers that Andrew Tate's been doing with, Chase Demore in that press conference. He's going viral as usual. Is he
Yes.
someone that you would be open to a discussion with potentially?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We'd be open arms to any discussions with Andrew Tate about taking on, what we do here in BKB. And I tell many of the pundits out there that cover our sport that, unlike boxing or other combat sports, our sport is a brotherhood, and the level of respect that the fighters have for one another going into and during and after these fights is incredible. And I think that's a big part of the appeal, because the willingness to go in toe to toe, no gloves, and really show your skill. It's something to experience, and that's where all of our growth with our audience comes from. We're growing with our viewership among females. We're growing with our viewership, amongst Gen Z as well as the millennials. They just, they clamor for our content constantly, both online and live. And somebody like Andrew Tate, who has a very strong ethos around manhood and all of that, I think he would be great, a great athlete to come into our sport.
Cool. Well, best of luck with tonight's show in Cardiff. People can watch that, like you said, on TalkSport. So look forward to that. And David, I appreciate your time.